the fact that you guys could build that car at home in your garage is like, it's mind blowing.
It's really no joke. We spent about 12,000 hours building this car. We took 2.5 years.
The reason why I think Hammerhead turned out so good is because we built a race car with no rules. The problem is a lot of racing has so many rules to it, it ruins the fun.
It's a highly developed race car with Motec and a really high-end LSR engine. And we have push-rod load sensors. We're working with various engineering on aero balance.
Wow.
It does 204 miles an hour. So, do you want the aero balance to be correct? I think you do. I don't want to go flying off the track. Give me a minute. It's super fun. Going to a place like SEMA, and I didn't realize we were building the car that was going to make it to the cover of Hot Rod magazine. So I was just floored when that happened. So,
yeah, it's very surreal, isn't it?
Welcome to another episode of Modified with Trick Factory Customs. If this is your first time watching or listening, my name is Elvis.
Tim?
Rob.
And we have some amazing guests today that I think you guys are going to be excited about. These are the guys from Horizon Motorsports.
I'm Cameron. I'm basically one of the people, we're a father-son duo that built Hammerhead behind us.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm the father. I'm Russel Cavan. I'm kind of a longtime car freak. I love cars since I was a little boy, and this was kind of the culmination of everything I ever dreamed about building. So we're excited to be here today. Thank you.
Sick.
Yeah, it's really great to have you guys on the podcast. You built an amazing car. I can't wait to hear a little bit about how it came to be. What drove you guys to building Hammerhead and where you guys are going. But how can people reach you guys? How can they follow along?
Basically, the best way is through our Instagram, which is Horizon_Motorsports_LLC. We are starting YouTube, but that's kind of a whole monster in itself to kind of learn. Especially because it's my busiest semester. I'm still a college student at Purdue Indy, so it's crazy balancing everything. It feels like I have 5 jobs.
That's so wild. And if you guys, before we dive into you guys' story, but if you guys do not know this car, I think for me, that was probably one of the most amazing cars that I got to see at SEMA last year. It's mind-blowing in so many ways.
We've been following it for quite a while. Before I actually seen it in person, we were all on it probably, I don't even know how long ago.
Months, or years.
At least a year and a half ago. We started right when you guys started, and I was like, okay, this thing is going to be cool. So it's been fun to watch it. And the evolution, just keeps going and going and going, which we're well aware of. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, so cool.
Thank you. One of the things that this is a tool really to teach Cavan in his quest for his motorsports engineering degree. So the evolution is really part of the overall idea. When we started this, we knew that was the process.
So have you always wanted to do this, Cavan? Has this been a dream since?
Well, I've been kind of bitten by the car bug because I was introduced so early on to all this stuff. So I really like anything that with a motor and wheels. But basically, we started looking at kind of career paths that would involve what I want to do. And we found that motorsports engineering at the time through IUPUI was really the way to go. It's basically a very, very focused mechanical engineering degree. Now under Purdue, it's underneath the mechanical engineering department. But basically, I just really like cars. And I really want to make cars go fast. So
That's amazing. Is Purdue in Indiana?
Yes, it is in Indiana. It's in West Lafayette. That's where the main campus is.
Yeah. Okay. The reason I asked, I've heard quite a bit. I went to school in Kentucky, and so a school called Campbellsville University. But we used to go to Indiana all the time, and I'm I heard about it, but I wasn't sure if it was in Indiana or if it was in Ohio or something. But that's amazing. Okay, sick. How did you get started, Russell? What's your background like? Because I'm sure that had a huge influence on Cavan's, on where Cavan is at now.
I was fortunate to have a fun career in IndyCar racing. It was called Car Championship Auto Racing Teams back through the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. It's now called the Indy Racing League. But, I was really a ranch kid from South Dakota that really loved tractors and cars and motorcycles and really, got my first car when I was 14. That's when you become a legal driver in the state of South Dakota. And I just, I had a Chevelle Super Sport when I was 14 and a half. And it just always around the car culture. That was really what life was like for a young male in the 70s and 80s. But, I was fortunate enough to be able to get a job in IndyCar racing in the late 80s. And it was a super fun career because, it really pushed the limits of how you thought about perfectionism in cars and what was expected to make an Indy car reliable and safe and go fast. You have to have just a super high level of preparation. And, it's all translated in maybe a better mechanic. And I'm not an engineer, but I kind of play one on TV. I know how stuff should be arranged. I get, just how big the oil line should be, how much radiator you need and stuff, but not really through calculation. And that's really why Cavan's going to school. He's good at math and he loves cars. So he can sort of help combine what he knows to make this car much better.
That is so
Okay,
sick.
now, looking at your guys' situation, the father-son dynamic, what was the father-son dynamic in your situation?
That's good.
Because obviously you had a successful career in it. So when your son is like, hey, I want to do the same thing, I want to lead into this, like, that there's a foundation and he's going to find success. What did your dad think of when you wanted to go fast being on a ranch? Because I know what my dad's opinion was when I was like, I want to build cool cars. He's like, you're an idiot.
Well, my dad was really a farm boy from South Dakota himself, and so he was a person that was a jack of all trades. I mean, this guy could teach you how to do anything in just good enough of a way to make the tractor run. You know what I mean? So he was a good teacher to teach me all kinds of things. I mean, I like to do carpentry. I like to do metal work. I like to do carbon fab. I like to do a lot of things now because he was a big influence in my life, and he was a stay-at-home entrepreneurial type guy that always had small businesses. And so it kind of teaches you, I think, along the way that, you can do what you want to do. You just, you have that role model. And that's, again, that's what our fathers can pass to the sons, is that message of, hey, you can work with your hands, you can use your brain, the sky's the limit. Just do something.
Mm-hmm. There's still a part of me that's like, I wish my dad was into cars as much as like you got. It's just a really cool, I feel like, bonding thing, like, to share. Because my dad, I didn't even know my dad even knew how to change oil. So yeah, well, it's really cool. So from your point of view, Cavan, like, what has it been like growing up with your dad, pretty much, and how has that also changed as you guys have kind of like, you've taken up the motorsport, the career pretty much in motorsports and all of that? Like, how has that changed?
Well, it's been really great because, like, there's a lot of people, like you've said, that, like, their dad doesn't, or their family members don't really have really an interest or much. They don't really know much about cars. So I literally called you yesterday late at night because I was studying with a bunch of my friends for a test. Actually, it was the night before. And I was like, hey, Dad, what do you know about preload? Like on a spring. And he was able to give his opinion, his expertise on it, and at least get me to a step where I could get to more knowledge. Mm-hmm. So the thing that's been really nice is that because I've been introduced to such early concepts, while other people are like, what's a rocker ratio? I can talk about linear rate versus rising rate. I have steps of knowledge that are way deeper than other people at my age. Oh, so that's what's been nice. It's like having an encyclopedia right there with you.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's a beautiful marriage between, like, the hands-on experience that you had, Russell, and Cavan. Now you're getting more of that technical, and you guys can blend that together. It's really, really great. In our shop, our little shop, it's kind of the same. Like, we do have a mechanical engineer on staff who can, like, just like you, like Cavan, he can, like, get right deep in the weeds if you really want to go there. And we're just, like, hands-on, kind of like get her done guys. Like, we're very much like how, Russell, like your father was, like, jack of all trades. That's kind of how we approach it. And we're, like, not afraid to try anything. And all those experiences are great. Blending that all together is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's how we probably do a lot of things intuitively, just like you. Like, that's not going to be big enough. I don't necessarily know why, but I know from experience that, like, from other things that I've seen. But now that we have a mechanical engineer on staff, you like, this is why it's not going to be good enough. So it's like, it's learning all that kind of stuff has been pretty amazing. Like, I just literally went to a presentation with them the other night about all these simulations and all these different tools that are available now that are, like, makes things so much smarter. Whereas before, we tend to overbuild things based on experience, whereas now it's so wild. Like things like the fact that you guys could build that car at home in your garage is like, it's mind blowing now. Like the level of stuff that's being produced now is insane.
I will take that a step further. I mean, I will completely agree with you. If you're not an engineer, your intuition is, when in doubt, build it stout, and you sort of overbuild things, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things in this car behind us, we had a weight limit that we were building towards, and we missed it because he's going to drive it. I'm the father. I'm thinking about safety all the time, and so I'm sure we could have built the entire tubular chassis differently if we would have really put an engineer on it at the time. Cavan was really a high school student at the time. This was his high school internship. So he wasn't an engineer yet. I mean, so we were just building it through my race car sort of knowledge and intuition. And looking back, for sure, we could probably have taken 50 or 60 pounds out of the chassis. But, if you're not an engineer, you just rely on the experiences you have and you put it together. But
yeah, that is so cool. Like to have both sides of the coin of because like you said, you didn't go to school for engineering, right, Russell? No, like that's so wild. And so like for building this car, exactly, like I'm sure there was a lot of things that you learned, Cavan. And so give me like your top 5, I would say, or let's as many as you can think of things that you're like, oh, this is like valuable that you didn't go into the project knowing this was your high school project, which is just wild.
Yeah, so the list is even longer than 5 things. I mean, I could sit here all day.
Keep going.
Yes, this was like we had built a 72 Nova Resto while before, and that was a project. But I basically said to my dad, I'm like, hey, I think I'm ready for something more intense. I really want to kind of learn a lot more. And oh boy, this got way more intense than what I think we both thought. Like way more intense. So when we first started this project, I had no idea how to weld. Like at all. Yeah, I tried MIG before, but I became really good at TIG. Like I can weld almost anything now, whether it's like stainless, aluminum, mild steel,
sheet metal.
Sheet metal. That's like one of the rear fenders on that. Those are all welded up, and that was a butt weld or seam weld all the way from one end to the other. And when I started at one, like I think it was at this front driver's side fender, I was trying all these different things, and by the time I got to the last fender, it was just easy, right? You just yeah. But generally, like I didn't know really much anything about composites. I'm still learning a lot about that. Like right now, we're making a big improvement on the car. We're working with Varus Engineering. So basically, I designed up this part. One of the things I learned was SolidWorks. So I learned how to use CAD.
Yeah.
That was big because there's like custom brackets on this car that we got 3D printed in carbon nylon, also by Varus Engineering, and machined by we got some basically all these tabs and all this smaller stuff. I was able to model up really quick and get them either sent out and machined, or we were able to design them here. Mm-hmm. But I would say basically welding, composites. Then there's the 3D modeling and understanding how machining works. So like I was working on a project with some classmates the other day, and it was basically one of the things was like, hey, make some improvements to this. So one of the things that we decided was make it lightweight. And they didn't really care whether it was going to be machinable or not, but I looked at it, I'm like, hey, that's not possible. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have a radius going into there. That's like a tool cannot fit in there. You have to design with intention of where the tool's going. So this project really at the end of the day has taught me how to really design and think through things, because what you had to do on this project was think 20 steps ahead and only act on maybe 1 or 2 of them at a time. So it really taught me how to basically be a practical engineer.
That's sick.
Super valid points, Kevin. Like it's really easy to take like some sort of theoretical idea and draw it up in CAD, but like, can you actually make that? Yeah, that's
100%. Like, exactly. And like, it's kind of funny because a third of our shop is part storage for Reynard Indy cars. So a lot of times, if I was trying to make a really nice part, I'd go back there and be like, how they do this? Like, how they weld this? Where they put this? So it's like literally, it's super, super, like there's some tabs on here. I'm like, why'd they do this? And then I go in and make the part. I'm like, oh, that's why they made it like that.
Yeah, we deal with it quite a bit with
it's
like really cool designs we send out, and then it comes back. It's like, if you change this radius this much, it'll shave 4 hours of production time off of this thing. You're like, So it's like it's a constant learning curve, like getting into that part, because we're kind of in the same position in our shop. We've embraced composites and 3D scanning and laser cutting and all this kind of stuff. So it's like this whole new learning curve, and you send out this cool stuff, and they're like, no, we can't. You know what that's going to cost to make? You're like, ugh.
And sometimes that's me saying, no, you can't make that. I'll be talking to the engineer, and he's like, come up with these crazy ideas. I'm like, man, I can't make that. So it's like an interesting process of back and forth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the cool things we just saw was now they have a simulation for manufacturability. So you can run it through a simulation to see if you can actually, if it can even be made.
That's amazing.
So I was like, that's another cool tool that we need to apply in some of our things. So yeah, it's a pretty cool time for building cars.
Yeah.
Cavan's done such a nice job of bringing the modern world into the build. You know, when you get a guy like it's my age that grew up on a farm or a ranch, you know, I use hand tools. So a lot of this, as you saw, was hand fabricated. But when you bring that element of digitally scan the car, and then Cavan can design parts, and they can integrate those parts into our digital model and run a CFD analysis to know if we have an aerodynamic improvement or we have a center of pressure improvement. These are all the things that are part of the development that Cavan now brings to it. Then they're so valuable because this is stuff you're not going to figure out without hours and hours of track time. We can get it figured out, we think, through CFD and start off much, much better.
Yeah, so true, right? And like the FEA testing and everything you can do digitally now really helps to alleviate a lot of issues long before they can happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really cool to also see the before and after, because before, like, we brought Alex in, our engineer, in, I was looking at you guys fabricate parts and make stuff that would take you X amount of hours, like so much longer. I mean, it still takes a lot of time to make it in like CAD or all of that, but you can repeat it multiple times and it's perfect and it's precise. And a lot of times, if you're like you're making it multiple times, it saves off so much time from that, because you literally just send it to the laser cutter and it just cuts it. And so it's so cool to see the evolution, I guess, of the shop since we started employing all of these modern technologies. So
yeah, we're at a pretty interesting time now with technology and bringing that together and marrying it into like the hands-on experience type of world that you came from, Russell. It's like it's such an amazing time, the opportunity to create something that, you know, 15, 20 years ago, you'd look at, you'd be like, I can't make that. It would take me a lifetime to make that. And now you can create these things. It's really, really cool. You guys created an amazing car. I love it. It's great.
yeah, it's so sick.
Thank you. Yeah. We had a lot of fun doing it. And it's, it's been a back and forth knowledge for me too, because when Cavan talked about some of these things you're just talking about is, Dad, you don't have to make that way. We can draw that, and we can, and I'd be like, do you know how much time it's going to take to draw that and model it? It's never going to fit. And he'll go in and go to the computer, and he'll come out and say, here it is, and we can have that 3D printed and have it like in a couple of days. And I'm like, okay.
That's awesome. Wow.
I don't know what it was, but I do remember that. I was like, in my head, I was like, I knew how long it could take for me. Like, I guess there's this, as we've been talking about, there's two worlds. There's the kind of do it yourself world, and then there's the design it. And it's kind of funny because in my head, I'm like, this is going to take me 10 minutes on a program to draw and be completely done the first version, right? And then, but to make it is going to be like a whole day's work.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So it was so funny because I eventually was like, Dad, just come up in my room. By the time you'll see how this works. And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of ruined us in the shop, because I'll look at something with 8 holes in it, and one of them is just like, let's just send this out. Like, it'll be so much faster. Now it's kind of made us almost lazy, because it's just so much easier to draw it in CAD and send it out. And then it comes back and then it's absolutely perfect. There's no room for error at all. But then some things we get machining, and it's like to do one, it's still faster to do it manually.
Well, and plus, you have less tool use in your shop. You have less mass. You don't have to worry about the employee standing there trying to make a bracket. We use sand cut sand for quite a few things now, and we're getting more used to that. But, you always want it now. That's one of the reasons you have your own shop, because you want to produce it and you want to have it in your hands instantly. But you have to sometimes just plan and be patient. It works out.
It makes you a better project planner for sure.
That's
you gotta
true.
We're pretty lucky that our guy turns our stuff around pretty fast, but you still need that 3 or 4 days to be thinking ahead of when you're going to need things.
Yeah, when we're working with companies like Sand Cut Sand, I mean, the turnaround on that stuff is pretty quick nowadays. So it's pretty cool. Like we now finally up here in Canada have Sand Cut Sand available. We don't use them.
We use an independent guy, but it's a friend of ours, but we see how valuable that is. Yeah. Even the quality of home built. Yeah, even the quality of home built projects now you're seeing is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And like just speaking into that a little bit, but because I remember initially when Alex started, like you guys were saying, of like Rob is trying to build something, and then Tim is like, oh, you could just have Alex just design it. And so it's like, oh, that realization there, it's like, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, because it's like I'm old world. Like I made everything by hand, and like so I'll get an idea in my head and I'll start executing, and I'm like, okay, this is just how I do it. And then Tim will roll in and be like, why don't you just do it like this? And be like, oh shit, yeah, that's a thing. I can do that now. Yeah. Okay, put that aside. We'll deal with that. Move on to something else. And it's like that's where we're at now, right? Like if you pre-plan, you get things sort of happening in the background. You get your robot army doing their things, and like it allows you the flexibility to think about more challenges and solving bigger problems than just those little things.
Yeah. And so, Cavan, where do you want to focus on in motorsports? Like, have you nailed down where exactly you want to be, or is it you want to do more fabrication side or design side or a mix of both? Or like, I mean, you guys have Horizon, so that's probably gonna kind of expand, or it's gonna be like a generalist. Like, what do you want to do?
No, when I went into my freshman year of college, I came in with a plan, and I was like, I'm going to be the lead engineer on the Arrow McLaren IndyCar team. That was my plan.
Oh, wow.
And then we went to SEMA, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, that I can do a lot more things. So right now, I literally have no idea what I want to do. I just really enjoy designing cars, driving them, and just being creative. Like the reason why I'm not so focused on specifically having a career in motorsports, but I still like the thing with the motorsports degree is that you're still able to design cars and you're still able to do many things that ME major can do. But the reason why I think Hammerhead turned out so good is because we built a race car with no rules. The problem is a lot of racing has so many rules to it, it ruins the fun. Like we were looking at the drifting rules for a lot of series, and it's like you gotta have the stock floor, you gotta have the stock bulkhead. It's like, and then there's rules where you gotta take a factory subframe and then you gotta cut it up to make it work for you because the steering geometry is screwed up. And in my head, I'm like, it would be literally cheaper than buying a $700 rusted out subframe to just build it for like way less material and to be stronger, lighter. So in my head, I just want to build stuff that's cool.
Yeah. You end up like going into things like Pikes Peak, doing stuff like that where it's kind of unlimited, just do whatever.
Yeah.
It's like that in Le Mans still, isn't it? Like the prototype class, like you can kind of just do whatever, design whatever you want, do your thing.
Yeah, I kind of see them as like bodied Indy cars and a mix of like bodied F1 in a way. Like there's a lot of open development, and the jump from what this is to an LMPH car isn't too different because those cars are very different, and a lot of them have stuff that's going on within the teams that they're developing. Like, so that's pretty intense. That would be pretty cool to do prototype or LMPH stuff. That would be, and I heard it's really fun. I heard that's a really fun part of the side of racing. It's gotten way, way more popular in the recent years. So that's definitely a direction I'd be willing to take, for sure.
Well, Kevin, I mean, you guys developed the Hammerhead, and if that's any indication of where you're headed, I mean, I think you got a long ways to go, and you got some major things to accomplish. So I think you're on the right path, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you guys must get it a lot, because I don't know if you're aware of the car that I built, and I built it strictly for fun. So you guys might get asked all the time, like, what are you doing with this car? And my answer is always, it's just for fun. Like, that was it. I literally built it just for fun, no rules, I didn't even really have crazy expectations. It's like very similar story. It's just like I had all these ideas and I just put them into one place, created this monster that's not really great at anything, because it's like it's overpowered, it's this, it's that. It's like it's terrible, but it's the most awesome thing I've ever created. But people have all these expectations, like it's going to suck at this, it's going to suck at that, and it's like, well, I didn't really build it for any of those things. I've just built it to have fun, and like people can't really make the connection. So I'm sure you guys get a lot of that same sort of feedback all the time. Like, how do you guys mitigate all that, or is it just I just did it for fun? That's it.
I'll back up the story just a little bit because it'll help you understand just how out of control this has become. But as I told you before, we started this when Cavan was in high school. Second half of his senior year, he was looking for an internship, and we convinced the school to let him do his internship here at our shop. And the idea was that we would build a track car for $30,000, just kind of a nice but a beater junkyard LS. spend about $30,000 in 5 months and knock out a car. And we started down that road, and Cavan started sharing it on Instagram. He fired up this Horizon Motorsports Instagram account, and we started gaining followers, and we ended up at SEMA 2022, and we started acquiring sponsors, and that started changing the balance. All of a sudden, we had turbo showing up and radium stuff showing up and vibrant stuff. And, trucks were backing up every day with product because they liked the father-son aspect. They liked the idea of the build because it was very ambitious. It was very different, the way we were going to move the engine back and use IndyCar suspension and all this stuff. And, now people look at it and say, now what are you going to do with it? And we still want a track car. I mean, that's really what we want to do. And Cavan really likes global time attack and grid life type events. And, maybe World Time Attack Challenge. They've shown interest in taking us to Sydney with the car. But, we don't fit in every rule book either with this because we don't have any stock floor pan. We don't have any stock firewall. And so no matter what we do with it, it's going to be a little bit on the unlimited side. And it takes time to develop a car like this. It's not just build it and go out, turn the key and run it. It's not a new Mercedes. It's a highly developed race car with Motec and a really high-end LSR engine. And we have push rod load sensors. We're working with Veris Engineering on aero balance where, it does 204 miles an hour. So, do you want the aero balance to be correct? I think you do. I don't want to go flying off the track. Give me a minute. So the idea is we are going to run it, but people, have to be patient because we will make sure it's right before we take it into competition. We are going to make sure it's developed with a series of track days, and then we'll go and take it to some events like, Global Time Attack or Grid Life events where people can come see it.
Yeah, and honestly, if that's its sole purpose is to bring you two together, create something amazing as a team, and then start working on the development and execution of ideas and just that creative outlet of it, regardless if you win any trophies or not, when you're on a track, it really doesn't matter because that's just a result of, whatever. But like the overall is you guys are just doing this, as a team to enjoy that experience, and that's amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
So
yeah.
Let all the haters talk shit. Whatever. No, because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's so sick. Like it's still something I'm like, it's like the ideal. That's what I would want. Like I'm like, it'd be so cool to build a car with my dad or to build it with my son because my son is like a year and a half or something. But every day I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to. I mean, it's gonna be his choice, obviously, at the end. But I'm like, I'm trying everything I can. I'm like, you're gonna be into cars one day.
Start saving your money.
I know it's gonna be expensive. So, but it's just such a cool bonding experience. And so, has building this car transformed your relationship? Has it stayed the same? Have you guys always been close, or?
We've always been close. From my perspective, it's just brought us closer. I mean, one of the things that, we've done right from the very beginning is we respect each other's ideas. I don't know everything, and he's trying to learn. So if he comes to me and says, Dad, what if we try this? What if we do this? It's game on. I want to do everything that allows his ideas to expand. Like right now, we're in the middle of building a very intense rear diffuser piece that's 6.5 feet long and 6.5 feet wide. It's a huge carbon project, but he drew it, and it showed great results in the CFD program. And so, no matter what, we're building it. And so he's working hard on his end in the education, school, and he's also helping on weekends and nights to make sure that these ideas are made into a reality. So it's only strengthened the relationship because I think we mutually respect each other's input and contribution.
That's so cool.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And just staying back a little bit to talking about people asking you like, oh, where is it on track and all of that. It is interesting because even Tim's car, you built that thing in 2019?
Yeah.
But it's still been an evolution. Like it's been constantly.
And it's very much like kind of parallels your story. It's like, there's things that we did, and then once you get it out there, and then another sponsor steps in, so you're switching that out, and it's like this constant evolution, and it seems like it's never going to be done. But I mean, that's kind of the fun part of it. Like, I don't know if I want it to be done.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, and the other part of all that too, and Kevin, you asked him what he learned so much from this project, and it's not all about the car; it's about relationships and business and sponsors and. Kevin has all of these people now that he deals with quite often that have been partnered or sponsored into the program, and they like Kevin, and they're asking about his future builds. They're asking about what he's planning to do. Mm-hmm. And so this whole idea of a good partnership where they're getting a proper exchange. And Kevin does a great job on the social media. He does it all himself. Wow. We got 130,000 followers roughly. He grew that naturally and organically himself with the content. And so he's learned about the business side of it as well as the fun part, which is the build side of it.
Yeah, that's so valuable too, because I know like even so I do like all the videos and like manage a lot of our social media stuff, but it's one thing and I also have my own stuff on the side, but like it's one thing to to know how to build cars, or in my case, to know how to make videos, but it's another thing to deal with the business side of things, which it's like literally a whole different side. And I'm sure you guys get it too. It's one thing to build cars. And
well, traditionally, like creatives and hands-on kind of guys were, fabricators before businessmen. So the businessmen part of it was like, it's been a long evolution as well. And a lot of mistakes are made and all that kind of stuff. So like, bringing these three different things together into one place is, I would say it's a pretty modern challenge, because like social media now is such a big part of what we do. And being traditionally, it's like you just did the work and then the work would come. Whereas now it's like, we got to show everybody the work, and it's like this constant thing. And it's like, we've discussed it on previous podcasts where it's like, if we're not showing the stuff that we're doing, our customers are like, hey, what's going on? You're not working on my car? Like, you haven't posted my car in a week. And you're like, take it easy. What we're currently doing is not that interesting. I'm sorry. So I didn't really, but a lot of people lean into it. So it's a big part of it. And then maintaining those relationships and sponsorships and following through and upholding your end is another really important thing. So and then as it evolves, you get better and better ones. So it's like mitigating, like, oh, sorry, we can't use you anymore because now we have this opportunity. So it's like you're trying to keep everybody happy all the time. So it's a tough thing to do.
It's definitely part of the car business, and it's so nice to have outlets like Instagram where you can show people kind of what the shop does and what the personality, the dynamic is like, and be able to attract. We get people asking all the time, would you build a car for us? Would you build this? Would you build that? And we don't do that. I mean, Cavan's a full-time student that's trying to find his way and where he wants to land. I'm a 60-year-old retired guy that decided to get involved in this, and it's gotten much bigger than I expected, and it's taking up basically all my time, to be able to get this car going. And we have some really wild ideas for a couple of additional builds that we want to get involved in. And, it's super fun going to a place like SEMA and meeting with all the people and just seeing the reactions to Hammerhead is priceless. I mean, I didn't realize we were building the car that was going to make it to the cover of Hot Rod magazine. So I was just floored when that happened. So
Yeah, it's very surreal, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I went on the SEMA website and your picture is like front and center of the SEMA website. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so sick. So I'm sure you didn't imagine any of that happening.
Yeah, no, it was so fun last year because, we worked, you've done a SEMA builds, I'm sure, before. And when you try to get across the finish line with a big build like this and you think you have enough time and the deadline is out in front of you and you're doing everything you can to make it, it's the last couple of weeks are just really something. I mean, the last day that we worked on Hammerhead before we could possibly push her in the trailer and take her out to SEMA was we worked 36 hours straight the last day, and there were 5 of us.
Yeah.
Half of our
And then we pushed it in the trailer, and we drove 26 hours. A friend of mine, a really good friend, he got sleep the night before, and he, I woke up somewhere in Kansas. I mean, I was like, where are we?
Yeah, we've been in that same situation so many times. We have guys in the shop that have PTSD about it. So it's but I think it's part of it. Like it's the whole adventure. Like we've joked about working on cars in the trailer, and it's almost happened a bunch of times. Like we got to an Airbnb, backed the car out. We're in the driveway, wrenching on the. Everybody in the neighborhood's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" Like it's going in tomorrow morning. So
these are strong character building moments, hey guys.
Yeah. I agree.
It's funny because the guy you drove out with, he used to run like
World of Outlaws.
Yeah, and he was talking about how they were so busy in between events, they literally had people working in the trailer. Like literally, it was. And he was so nonchalant about it. It was so fun.
Yeah, that's just life. That's just what it is.
Got to get it done somehow.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'll tell you, it's 100% worth it in every way, no matter how hard those days are. It's not just a great story. It's really what brings people together. And then at the end, you're really proud of what you accomplished. I mean, you put everything you add into it.
Yeah.
And then, we rolled into SEMA. We could just barely get it off the trailer, and we already had multiple celebrities in the car world on top of it.
Awesome.
And, they're calling people saying, you gotta see this thing. The wildest car I've ever seen. So we were getting, affirmation right from the very beginning. But it was, with Vibrant Performance and SEMA, they put on a first-class booth, and it was awesome. I mean, it was the right place for us to be last year. And I think this year will even be better.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you guys about just more into the engineering or the building part of the Hammerhead. So there was a picture that I remember seeing that we were like, we were trying to see how it was going to work, but there was like a tube running inside, I think, from the turbos.
The charge pipe?
Yeah,
that one caused a lot of ruckus on its social media. I was
it
in the
caused a lot of
comments. I was like, because even I was like, oh man, that's not great.
like,
That's going to get real hot. So I was like, how are you going to mitigate that? And then I got in the comments and I was like, oh.
People are
I was way behind. So
yeah.
that stuff's kind of fun to watch.
Yeah. So I can look at that. Well, we can look at this from several perspectives, but I literally did the math on it of what the max PSI of boost we could do before the air gets too hot. And if we ever get to that point to where we need to go more boost, well, we have several ideas of how we're going to cool the air charge. But generally, like when we drove the car for the Autotopia LA video, it was, I mean, I could touch it when we're on high boost. Well, not even high boost. We don't even run that much.
Yeah. So if you got a chance to see on Instagram our dyno clips that we put out, we did a day on the dyno with the tuner, and we're a Motec system, and our engine revs 9,000 RPM. And so we got it all tuned and shifted, and we stopped at 14.7 PSI of boost. Okay, and that's 1,350 horsepower roughly. 1,100
wheel.
at the wheel.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about boost levels and temperature and all of that stuff, there's a lot of factors. One of them is exhaust sizes and the charge tube sizes, and the compressor map has to be matched. And we worked with Garrett, and we think that we've picked the right turbo, and we think our exhaust sizes and our tailpipe design and our diffuser design really helps release a lot of heat. But at 14.7 psi, that's a pretty good amount of horsepower. We're probably going to end up backing a lot of that out with door control anyway until we get our tires really hooked up. But when we drove it, I think, the air inlet charge at the throttle body, we know our intake's turned around facing to the rear the way we've designed it. And I think the air temperature charge inside was in the 160s, 170s. So, if we turn the boost up to somewhere around 25 PSI, we know that we're going to get 220 degrees of air temperature, and that will be a problem. And as Cavan indicated, we have solutions. We don't run an intercooler on the car just because of packaging constraints, but we could go back and redesign that. It would add weight and it would add plumbing challenges. But we think that we'll probably methanol inject at that point a pre-compressor instead.
Now you got to
Because
drop
that
that.
will also give more horsepower.
Now you got to drop all that in the comments.
That's the problem. It's like I get what people are saying, but they also thought it was the lag machine and it was going to be boost come tomorrow and Bluetooth boost.
Boost come tomorrow.
I've heard all of those, but at the end of the day, keep this in mind. We have a 388 rear axle ratio. Okay, we have a 9,000 RPM engine, so we have a tremendous amount of gear torque that goes to the rear wheel. Okay, boost is not our problem. We can continue to lower boost. We can make more power than we can use. So we think that as far as lag, there is no lag. I mean, part of it is because we have a gear ratio that puts us into a place that will, even if we run a naturally aspirated at 740 or 780 horsepower, I think
still
this
have
was
a lot
on the
of power.
dyno. We have more power than we could use. We can take the boost probably most of it out most of the time anyway.
Yeah, and there's also one more important note. Because of the length of our system, like they used to do turbo systems where there's the front engine Corvette on a Callaway and the turbos were all the way in the rear.
back,
They
yeah.
didn't experience turbo
You
lag.
almost
Turbo
get
lag comes from... Oh, what were you saying?
I was going to say, you almost get an intercooling effect just based on the length of
Yes.
the charge pipes.
That's
It cools
Because-
down with the distance. Yeah.
Yeah, because when we were driving the Autopia video, I reached as far back as I could, and I felt it, and it was like, okay, that's pretty warm, but I put my hand on the intercool or the charge tube section where it goes into the intake. I was like, that I could put my hand there all day.
so
It's pretty. So because of the length, it's basically acting as an intercooler, like you said. And turbo lag really primarily comes from basically improper turbo sizing. Well, improper is a loose term. If you're looking for a response time, then you need to go with you need to go with a smaller turbo. But if you're going for all-out power, then those systems are built to have lag. I mean, you can't escape it.
Yeah. That's so cool. And so what about, is it going to be a challenge to drop all of that? Like what if you want to service it or service the engine and all of that stuff? Because there's so much stuff.
Well, admittedly,
everywhere.
that's probably the biggest challenge that our car has. I mean, I had to change the spark plugs, the gap at the dyno.
Wow.
And that I thought I might slit my wrist before I did it. Just check out. But I went ahead and did it, and it was hard. But you know what? We got to 6,000 RPM, and the boost was blowing the spark out. And he could show us on the EGTs. He goes, "Hey, Russ, how big is your spark plug gap?" And I said, "I don't know. It's been a year since I said it, and I don't have the manual with me and all the thing I wrote down." And he said, "Well, I'm telling you, it's tube wide." And he goes, "It needs to be 16 thousandths of an inch." And I'm like, "Wow, that's really." And he goes, "Yeah, it does." So he said, "Unless you want to stop now, we need to get in there and change the spark plug gap." So he said, "The left side looks to be blowing out worse. Why don't we start there?" So I took the panel out of the side, and I got in there, and I think it took me 30 minutes to change the left side gaps. It's not that bad.
That's not
And
bad.
no. And so as soon as we did that, I mean, it made 1,050 horsepower at 6,000 RPM with the spark plugs blowing the spark out.
On basically like 6 cylinders,
Yeah.
4 cylinders or something.
So we did that side, and then he said, okay, now we need to do the other side because we were at 1,200 horsepower and it was blowing the other side out. So we did all of them. And you know what? It sucked because they're tucked in there and you got to pull some engine paneling back, right? But there are other cars in the marketplace that it's very difficult to change a spark plug on. Factory cars. But the engine application, the way we wanted this car with the power unit, we call the gearbox and the torque tube, with all of its exhaust and the engine and all of it all lives as one power unit. And so the way it's designed is you take the diffuser out of the bottom of the car, that exposes the gearbox section. You take out a skid floor under the car that's about 3 feet long, that exposes the torque tube area. And then there's a kind of a big skid floor under the engine that opens that window. And then the power unit comes out. Everything's on dry brake connectors, and we have gamma connectors for the water system that are really quick to disconnect, and Vibrance dry brake connectors on the fuel system. And it's the whole thing comes out of the bottom, and we have custom scissor lifts that allows that to happen. Now, we've not physically done that yet because the car got built for SEMA last year, and it's been reliably together ever since. But at some point, yes, we will be taking it out of the bottom of the car, and it is what it is. It's what you have. It's the price you pay for 53% rear weight balance. This car will handle better than just about anything out there because the engine's not sitting on the front axle.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to just hear the thought process behind all of it. Talk a little bit about because you mentioned not building cars for customer. People have obviously approached you to build cars for them. And so you don't think, or Cavan, do you think you would want to potentially maybe do that on the side at some point? Or is it strictly you're just building projects for yourself and that's it?
Right now, as of now, is really just basically building projects for herself. But maybe in the future, that is what the path I should take, where it is building cars for customers. But like this car, I mean, at a normal shop rate, it's anywhere from $100 to $150 an hour, and we have probably 12,000 hours into this. And so, it's hard. It'd be hard to find clientele that want to pay that much in just labor, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's the parts costs on top of that, and so it would be, you would have to have a very special clientele for maybe this level of build. Maybe people would want something like a mini Hammerhead where it's half of this extreme.
Yeah.
So it would just be a whole different battle,
Yeah. And then you have to deal with all the business side of things, and it's going to be interesting.
Oh yeah.
Now we have thoughts. We talk about this quite often. Where do we want to go with it? Because we're overloaded in our little shop, and we have still a lot of really cool builds we want to do, and it makes it really difficult to service and run Hammerhead at the track and do builds at the same time. But who knows? Maybe we will get a new facility in the next year or two when Cavan gets out of school and think about really doing builds for customers. We haven't ruled it out. It's just not the place where we started this journey. We started it with him getting a degree, as he told you, and he wanted to be a head engineer in an IndyCar team. So we'll see where his path takes him. But wherever it is, we're gonna support that.
Oh, that's so sick.
Adding customers to the dynamic is... I wouldn't do it. It makes it so difficult.
Yeah. I think people will find that I'm very particular. I see things a very certain way. It'll be funny because originally we had a different front fender on this, and you kind of papered it up, and you were like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "What do you think?"
He's very... it wasn't papered up. I actually made the fender out of the whole body thing out of steel. And I sent it to him, and I said, I had it all tacked on there. I said, what do you think? Because he's at school, and he said, do you like it? I'm like, yeah, I like it. And he goes, well, I was thinking it might look like this or that. And I'm like, all right, he's right. It would look better if it was like that. So off it
Ripped
came.
It up.
We made it.
Yeah, but I kind of for me in the creative process, I'll see things a very, very certain way, and I know it has to be that way for it to look good. And also there's some extent to where it like needs to function too. This car is really about function, and that's what creates the form. But I don't know. It would be hard to work with a client in a way. Like we're not factoring it out, but I have a very certain way of where if you give me a car and you tell me what it needs to do, I can design it to look and good while it does that job. And it might not be exactly what they're initially thinking.
For.
Yeah, it's a weird problem to try to tackle because you get to a place where it's like they love everything you do. Like, I love your car, I love everything, I want to build something, and then they want to put their sauce on it, and you're like, that's not what we do. That is not even close to what we do. So it's a weird thing to try to mitigate, like, and we struggle with it all the time because it's like trying to find that balance of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. It's tough because a lot of people's aesthetic is just not great. Like, it's hard to deal with. It's a struggle.
Car builders they're artists.
Well, it took us probably 20 years to find our customers. Like, we've been at it we did a lot of stuff we didn't like before we got to a place that we could do something that we like. But ultimately it was us just building a car any way we wanted. Because we built the business for so long, and then finally we're like, let's just build something crazy that's our own. Because we had all those like, oh, we'll build this, we'll take it here, we'll do this, and we never got to do it because there was always a little bit of them in it. Once we got to do it our own way, that's when things really jumped off, and now it's got us a much better class of customers that are more here specifically for what you do. Like, they believe in what you do because you proved yourself, you did it. Now it's easier for them, whereas before it's like you're always building something kind of halfway, which was always a struggle. So you're kind of jumping it off right from the beginning in the right way. So it's like you could come into your shop and have confidence, like, I can see it, you did it, and this is what I want to do. And if they're smart enough, they're like, I can't do that, so you just do your thing. So it's, yeah, you're jumping off from it took us 20 years to get to where you've got to jump off from. So you're way ahead of the game. So it's pretty cool.
What advice would you give to, and this also applies to Russell too, but what advice would you give to someone else that's starting? Because there's a lot of kids that approach us with some plans, but it's like, even if sometimes they can achieve it, but the dreams might be above what they can currently do. But what plans or what advice would you give to someone that is just starting out, that's like, oh shoot, I want to build something like the Hammerhead?
What I would say personally is don't limit yourself, because like you can have an initial goal and sometimes it's hard to achieve it and it'll become less of what you initially thought. But sometimes if you just dream big, it can end up being big. So it's really just, you gotta put yourself out there, and then you gotta basically, a lot of our relationships weren't really like, we made a lot of relationships through just Instagram DMs, but what we really found was meeting people in person is what makes the difference. Because like a lot of companies, they're going to get 1,000 messages a day.
Yeah.
Right. So you're just one message. But if you show up in person, because like humans are still very like, we're about being here in person. So that forms that connection and gets that relationship started to work with people. Mm-hmm. But generally you want to dream pretty big, I would say.
Yeah.
So how do you get beyond the roadblock of, like, you mentioned welding? So you're like, I have this dream, I want to do this, but now I got to pause that and go put 3 months into learning how to weld to get to a point where I can move forward from this spot. Like, so that whole situation, like, we see the people have these roadblocks all the time, and they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, and they're trying to do it to the finished car. And we always try to tell them, like, you need to go off, practice, do this, make whatever you can, burn up a bunch of materials. So, like, how do you get beyond those roadblocks? Because honestly, that's generally what I see stopping most of these younger guys' projects is the having to sidetrack, get the education, and then come back and stay on track. So, like, the fact that you spent all this time and hit all these milestones and ended up with the end result is pretty unique. Like, it's actually quite rare, because we see dead projects all the time that have run into the need for education or knowledge or guidance, and then that's where they stop because they don't want to go beyond that. So it's like you're amazingly lucky you have your dad there to lean on, but like, how did you get beyond all of that, like, without getting discouraged? And you know what I mean? I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
describing
and there were moments where I was discouraged. I was like, I just can't figure out how to do this. It's like, you need to create a goal in your head. That's what you need to do is the first step, where if your goal is to become a very good welder, you need to set that goal, and then you need to think, what things do I need to do to make that goal happen? And a lot of times, anything you do in life is going to just take time and patience and a lot of practice. So before we started doing this, I was a competitive swimmer. And basically, you have only about 2 hours or 4 hours per day to really get better. So, and you can only really focus on probably, I don't know, 2-3 things at once to be, and if you focus on too many things at once, then you're not going to be able to make progress on anything. So, like when I was swimming, one of the things I want to do was get better at my underwaters. So I basically told myself I'm going to do 3 kicks off the wall and then surface, no matter what. I don't care what it takes. So I did that, and I got better at underwaters. So I was like, okay, I don't want to breathe as much in the 50. So I told myself, okay, if I normally breathe 7 times, that's way too much to begin with, I'm gonna try to do it with 5. So basically, the whole idea is you need to set a goal for yourself. You need to see what it's going to take to make it possible, and then stay on top of it. So I guess that's the main thing I can say.
Yeah. What about you, Russell?
Yeah, I would say that it is challenging for young people, because young people don't grow up like they used to, right? A lot of kids live in subdivisions. Subdivisions have homeowners associations. They want the garage door shut. They don't want any cars parked around. They don't want any noise. And so, when you're telling somebody that they need to go in the garage and weld and grind and beat on a panel, it's not going to happen for a lot of kids, and it's hard to find even garage space to do so. But, there's always a way to overcome. These kids, if they're passionate about car build, they've got to get involved somehow with somebody that's doing it and offer up their time, look over their shoulder, try to learn. And you're absolutely right. The educational part of it can take months to catch up to what skill level they need to build a quality piece. I mean, Cavan's was accelerated because we brought in the best people from all aspects from the IndyCar teams that I managed and was part of for 25 years. So, we had him get up to speed really quickly with the welder from the McLaren IndyCar team. So he got that, and he got tutorials on YouTube, and he got me out of his way because I'm not a very good welder. and then he sat at the bench and he worked on it. And, you know how it is. If you're really a good car builder, you got to be a perfectionist, right? You're trying to strive. All those little details are, not good enough just to make a weld and grind it smooth and cover it up and paint it. You're going to do all of it and this is Cavan in a nutshell. This is what he wants to do is not cover those things up and show off all those welds. It's obviously Instagram is full of beautiful welds. If you go through Instagram at all, you see all these beautiful welders. But, it is time consuming and it is a challenge. And I respect you saying that, because we've got to give these kids more opportunities so they can learn some of these hands-on skills, because they can't afford to pay for all of these things, right? There's no way they're going to be able to afford to have a shop do all of those things for them. So education is really part of it. I wish high schools were, back on that idea of let's teach kids some vocational skills so they can decide if they want to weld or they want to be a carpenter or whatever they want to do, because all those things kind of go into your brain, and you do one thing, you probably can do 10 others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, early on when Cavan and I toured the floor, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is a business card that we had made before we toured at SEMA 2022. And it introduced people to our Instagram account, which had about 1,500 followers at the time. But more importantly, what's on the back of the card was important because it articulated our vision, right? We could show people, this is what we are building, right? And so when we walk into places that like Vibrant Performance, we said, hey, we're father-son, we're going to build this car, and here's what it's going to be. You get to tell a story. And I think the render is a super powerful tool in any car build because it helps people understand what it's going to look like, including the people who are making it, right? Because you stay on course. And we used it a lot in our sponsor gathering materials, and we use it a lot in our shop. And you can't always maybe build a car exactly like the render looks, But eventually, if you don't, you have that render, version 1, version 2, version 3 as you go, just to make sure it well represents what you're up to.
Like your current vision. Because if you look at this car, this car didn't have a rear wing, it had a different front end. It had, but it still is based the same car.
The vision,
as we got more sponsors, the car evolved.
Mm-hmm. I never really thought that the render was going to be such a big piece of the puzzle, but I really think it's important because, car building takes a long time and it's really difficult and it's expensive and all of those things. But if you always have that North Star that you're looking at, like, hey, that's where we're going. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
I think it helps everybody stay involved.
Yeah, we've noticed that a lot too, and we've actually done a podcast on it. We're starting a project with Ash Thorpe. I don't know if you're aware of them. So we 3D scanned the car, and they developed essentially the render, and then now the quality and the accuracy of the renders is like, this is exactly what we're making. So just even in the interim of that, because we've been probably going back and forth for 6 or 8 months before we released the render. It's like, and then now that we've dropped the render and they can put it in all these sort of creative spaces, like on tracks and all this kind of stuff, is like how quickly people have gotten invested in the project because like, they're like, I'm here for this, like, let's do it. So it's like, it's a really powerful tool because you know what you're getting, you know what you're investing in. And even for us, it's like, it's an easy direction because we don't have to talk to each other that much about, like, hey, how are we going to do this? It's like, well, does it look like this? If it doesn't look like this, then we got to do this. So it's definitely really, it's been a transition, even with interactions with customers, because it's like, now they can see exactly what they're going to get. Like, this is what the expectation is. You agree with this? Perfect. Now we don't have to, we're on the same page. So it is a really powerful tool. And even CAD design, same thing. It's like, this is what we're making. It's like, okay. So it makes it really, really simple. So it's pretty cool. And then the sponsorship side of it, it makes it easy. You send it off, and if you've done something like yourself, like you've made this crazy car, we have 4 or 5 cars that we've presented at SEMA now. So when you show them that and you say, this is what we're going to build, and they have that confidence in you, it's easy to create relationships. And same thing, like we go around every year, shake every sponsor's hand, make sure we hit every spot. So the next time you come back with your hand out, it gets easier and easier. So, but yeah, like we discuss it, like they must get 1,000 people looking for free stuff every day. So it's like, unless you do your homework and you present them with something and a plan, and this whole thing is like, we tell people all the time, how do you want sponsorship? You got to invest in your own project before you can expect somebody else to invest in it. So it's like, you got to take it so far before you can start asking for free stuff. And then you better come through, because if you don't, you're just making them even more jaded for the next guy. So, yeah.
It's absolutely correct. That's absolutely right. I mean, I think that's one of the advice pieces I've given some young builders, like what can they do to land in this position? And it's very difficult because, I mean, part of what this is this relationship that Cavan and I have put into this car. Plus, 2.5 years of just every day in the garage is hard for most people to do. And I had the time and the resources to be able to do it. And we had the enthusiasm that was created by the Instagram and the render and the sponsors and all of the buy-in that we were getting. But, if you're a young person and you're starting in that, you're absolutely right. You have to present to them what you're going to do, and you have to do it. And you have to show them that you've done it. And whether it's social media numbers and giving them, access and time to all of the tutorials that you might be able to put together on how to use their products in the best way. It's a business for them. They're not just handing out free stuff. They need us to do our job. And Cavan's super good at that. Like I said, his social media stuff, he's got a great personality for it. And we were able to for our first build for SEMA, we were able to kind of do a good job, I think. You know?
And again, it's really cool to see the progress from, again, being like active and posting and all of these things to get, the hype up for before SEMA, because I was like, oh my gosh, I want to see this thing in person, even before I saw it. And so I think, you guys are doing a great job at that, and that's huge. Like we were talking about of asking for sponsors and delivering in the end, so that they know what to expect. Because if not, it just shuts the door for a bunch of other people that might be wanting to do that. And again, most people forget that even though these guys are selling like Vibrant, they're selling parts, and sure, they want to sponsor car or people and all that, but they're also a business and they have to make ends meet. They have to be able to see how this is going to benefit them in business. And so that part is also important too. And so, yeah, but you did, Cavan, you did mention a good point too. Just reiterating your point of going to meet them in person. Like there's nothing that beats that. Hey, I'm blah, 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 XYZ, introducing yourself and actually saying hi. And so they can associate, even if they've seen your build or whatever in pictures, but it's a different thing with actually seeing it in person or meeting you in person and, yeah, deciding to work with you. So, yeah, it's pretty great points. And
Hammerhead would not be what it is today without our sponsors. I mean, that is a fact because, every step of the way as we grew popularity on Instagram and people were following along in the build, and we get Garrett, for instance, and Radium and Vibrant. I mean, those are just a few. VP Racing Fuels. I mean, there's a huge list of people who have jumped on board, and they kept elevating the build, and we had to be able to chase that with our resources, right? Yeah. Because every time you ask for an integration of an improvement, it's not all free, right? You have to invest in behind it with the change. But Vibrant, man, they were super good because we said, hey, we're going to go from junkyard LS to an LSR with twin turbos, and all the stuff that we ordered is now all the wrong size. There's a new order, and they're like, we're in,
Yeah, we were just discussing
so cool about
the importance of it this year is because we've traditionally, I guess, part of the mistake that we made was letting our work speak for itself, like trying to get the work out there and not really focusing that much on the relationship side of it. So like this is like now we've kind of leaned in to make sure that we're present at all these different things, shaking all the hands, talking to all the people, so that when there is new developments and then there's new opportunity, you kind of stay front of mind for them. And then the other side of it is making sure that you follow through with what you say you're going to do. So that part of it is like definitely a new part for us because I'm kind of antisocial. So like going and like, hey, hanging out and talking cars and like all that kind of stuff is like, it's a struggle for me. So it's like, but we see how increasingly more important it is to be present and participate in all these industry sort of things and be there and very much like you say, show up, tell them your plan firsthand, shake their hands, do all those kind of things, like how important it's become in this, because we do get super detached because of social media. So I think it's almost more important because so much of our communication now is just through social media. Like, oh, I put it on it. You didn't see my Instagram? Like, what is out there? So it's an interesting dynamic.
We also we enjoy spending time. We've taken Eduardo Triple Crown of Rodding. We were at the LS Fest. This was all about a month ago, and we did the SEMA show. We've had multiple cars and coffees around our area, and we spend PRI. We spend a lot of time engaging with the public about the car, and I think that's the other part of it that you really need to do. It's not just a promotion of the car. I mean, all of this stuff happens in a circle with all of the people who are involved. So we spend a lot of time talking to people and talking about the products and why we use them and things like that. And it's not really an infomercial. It's the truth. It's why we did it. And I think people really want that genuine response.
Yeah, and it's easy when you're working with companies, your support companies that are products that you actually can get behind. It's like it's easy then. You're like, okay, well, Vibrant makes great stuff. Yeah, VP's great fuel. It's like all these things. You're like, yeah, you should use this. I use it, and this is why. It's just easy.
Right.
Yeah. And so, what is you guys' favorite part? Let me just go I'll start with you, Cavan. What is? Give me your favorite thing about the car, about the Hammerhead. What is one thing that you're like, oh, or like something that you're the most proud of for building on it?
I mean, this might not be the response you're expecting. It's finishing it, because it was such a intense build, and the whole build is just so intensely complicated. It was nice to see the renderings, but it's just so nice to just sit in it and to see it, and it's crazy to just see something that you thought up is in person.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I had to name a specific part of it that I really like, it's got to be kind of the body styling. right? And we've achieved the body was like it obviously holds everything on it, right? But it's crazy to think everything we packaged inside the car. I mean, it's a big car, but we fit a lot in it.
Yeah.
So there's so many layers that goes into that question. So yeah.
No, you nailed it though. Like just finishing something of that caliber, or even in a very basic version of it, just finishing something is worthy of commenting on, for sure.
It's pretty extraordinary. Like we lean back to the social media thing again. It's like social media lets you believe that there's thousands of these things out there, but the reality and like the actual accomplishment, like if you took all these crazy things and put them in one place, kind of like what SEMA allows you to do, there's like 100 in the whole world. So like what you've accomplished is like, it is so crazy to get it to the end and get it finished. And it's like, we've struggled with it, and it's like, sometimes it never feels like it ends, but like that first time that you bring that thing to life is yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment. And like I try to explain to people just how epic it is, but it's like social media kind of takes a little bit away from it. It's like, it's not done yet, and you're like, oh man,
Relax.
No, that's where we're at.
It's like, you guys go ahead, sorry.
It's a very, very emotional experience, really, when you do something like this, especially when you added this dynamic that we have as father and son, and you put a deadline in there, and it's so important to have deadlines. We all know we need them, or things would go on forever. But the SEMA deadline was very surreal because, we were so honored. Vibra was our first sponsor. They aggressively said yes to us when we first met them, and they believed in us. So they told us in May, hey, we picked you for the booth, and will you be ready? Oh yeah, no problem. But it became a problem. Right? Like it was hard in the end.
Because you don't want to disappoint them too.
You don't want to disappoint anybody. You have all of these people involved, and some of them you know, and some of them you don't know. Your followers, you don't know many of them, but they're obviously watching you for a reason. They like the content. You want to let them down, but you have sponsors and partners who have bought into your ideas. You have your family. You have other people from my background that jumped on board to sort of get involved to try to make sure we could get across the finish line. But no, it was like, you need the intensity to finish a car. That's one of the things you cannot just have an open-ended deadline. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I feel like that's so important. Even in my short career of building cars, and even though they are not super extreme, but I think that hard deadline is so important because even when I built when I did my Datsun, so I have a Datsun that I did a wide body on, fender flares, all of the things. It was like my first build, I would say. It was not really done well. There's a lot of shortcomings to it, but starting it was one thing, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna build this, and I didn't have any sponsor, so I did everything, but my hard deadline was, I needed to move out of my place by X amount of days, and I'm like, I need to drive this thing out of here, and it doesn't need to be on jack stands. And so that was like, I had to do this. And I have noticed, and I didn't really set it as like a hard deadline. It was set for me. But I have noticed that I need to do that or employ that in my future builds, because now I still have some builds and I'm like, I won't really say it's ADHD, not ADHD, but I feel like I get too invested in one car and I'm like, I have all the dreams and plans, start on it, but then there's another shining piece of candy there. I'm like, oh my gosh, scrolling Facebook Marketplace, I see another car, I'm like, I want to build this, and I buy that car, hoping to, and the other one is still sitting, and it just continues and continues. So yeah, they've tried to.
We're trying to steer them, guide them.
You got to focus your attention, focus your resources, focus your energy.
It's so hard though.
Because we've made all the same mistakes. Like we got a yard full of upcoming projects, but we've definitely learned to focus our energies into one place, complete that, and move on to the next. But it's hard, especially as a young person. Like there's so much opportunity and so much oversaturation, and you're getting pulled in 100 different directions. So it's hard to stay on track. Mm-hmm. So.
You're absolutely correct. That is exactly the challenge, is that, as a creative person, you're always looking to the next creative project. And a lot of your sponsors and followers are doing the same. Like, what's next? What are you going to do next? And so you're trying to juggle that as well, because it's not just like drop this project when it's done and move on to that one. You're still playing with that one a little bit, and you have to have the components ready to begin the next build. So it is a business, at the end of the day, it's what it is. You just, we get to have our hobby become sort of our business. And that's fun, but you're really looking at the two people of Horizon Motorsports. I mean, we don't have a shop full of people. We built this really ourselves. We brought in a wiring guy that did the wiring, because the wiring, of course, is very complicated with a car like this. And then I've got a friend who's a painter at Andretti Autosport that put the paint on it for us. But we did all the metal work and all the body work. He just painted it. But basically, we did the rest.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And so, like, Russell, like, how much, if you could grade it as a percentage, how much do you have invested, like, time and all of that stuff in the car versus Cavan? Was it like a 50-50, or did you just let him do most of it and then call you in when he needed help with stuff? Or
no, it probably was. As far as time spent, I would probably have to give myself probably 60% of it, because Cavan is a full-time student.
Yeah.
So his days are 5 days a week. We're on campus. So he's a half an hour from home, and that gives him the ability to come home and weld all weekend, or come home and weld at night and stuff like that. So I would have to call it probably a 60-40 split, just because while he was in school all day, all through the day, I would be in the shop. And, it's really no joke. We spent about 12,000 hours building this car. We took 2.5 years, maybe it's going on 3 years of labor to finish off the last items. But I worked for 2.5 years every single day in the shop, Saturdays, Sundays, and without fail, we were in the shop every moment of the day, because, it's like we were building something way too complicated. The problem is, part of it is I'm 60 now, almost 60. And you have all these ideas of things you want to do, right? So you're trying to put them all in that one build, because I don't know how many more I'll do. I have no idea. But this was the one I was going to get to do with him in this period of time, and we wanted to get it right.
Yeah, that's huge. And so, like, Cavan, like, how did it go with your friends? You're just like, every weekend you're like, bye, I'm off to work on my car with my dad, and that's it. Did they ever come?
Basically, I'd be doing a little bit during the week at school, because sometimes there'd be a little bit of like a CAD project or something I'd be working on, or some design, or something I was working with someone else on the car. Like, we would like getting stuff re-rendered to see if this idea would really work on the car. But it was kind of funny, because my first 2 years of school, I would just work really hard to get stuff done. Get like what everybody else was doing in 7 days, I was doing 4 or 5. And I was just grinding. I was up early. I was up and I was up till late at night.
Wow.
And then I would get here, and roughly sometimes I would drive home Friday night, or sometimes most times I would drive home Friday night. And I would wake up here Saturday morning, and I would just work all the weekend. And sometimes I'd be here till Monday morning, too.
Yeah.
Before classes.
So do you get that from your dad?
I don't even know. I think we just kind of we both have this mindset of it has to be done on this time. We just do what it takes,
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm a father, so that situation is, like, I try to explain to my son, like, like this 5 years now is going to basically set up the whole rest of your life, because we see a lot in different trades in our industry, and it's like, okay, well, this is as high as you can go because you wanted to be the cool kid in high school. So, like, this is the consequences of your actions there. So, like, trying to get, like, my son, amazing, he's a chef, he's done all the things, so he's done all the things correctly, but trying to explain this to these other kids that hit us up all the time on social media. And it's like that exchange is, like, again, it's super unique, like, because I'll tell somebody, like, I want to come work in your shop. You guys are amazing. You're the best. Is blah, 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 blah. What can I do to go do, like, to be there? I was like, well, you can go take this course, because you need a foundation, at least in one of the disciplines, to get yourself in the door. Like, oh man, that's like a 5-6 month course. And you're like, okay. Like, Yeah, it is. Well, and then they want to be
Yeah,
doing
that's-
all these other things. So like, how do you, like, you must be able to see the vision to be able to step away from all those distractions.
Yeah, I bet there's
Like,
a lot of distractions.
You know what I mean? Because it's pretty unique because like even for my son, he came, like, graduated school, went straight to work the same day. Like, we went to his graduation ceremony 2 in the afternoon. He was on the floor at 4 working at his new job. So it's like, I know it's unique, but then you see all of his other buddies. They're out burning tires, doing all these crazy things. They're out till midnight trying to do, and it's like, I don't know how we, like, it had to have come from your dad. Like, I don't know how we create this. Like, I tried to explain it, but it seems like this, you know, and you're going to deal with it because you have your young son. So it's like, yeah, it's weird.
Well, I tell you what it is, you know, you try to reflect on I reflect on my life and trying to make sure that I keep him from making some of the same mistakes that I made, right? So when we look back on our lives and we realize how much energy we have when we're in our 20s, and we realize how open our mind is to learning in our 20s compared to how it is when you get older. And so we talk a lot about, you know, making sure he spends this time now to get educated and to do things that are building on who he is as a person. Because I think that's what, you know, if you're just out there partying or you're just screwing around all the time and not being productive, you know, those early years in your 20s are just, they're formidable. And I think, you know, you can change the course of your life by doing all the right things when you're in your early 20s. And I think he's on that path. I mean, I completely know how hard he's working. And so hopefully he won't have to work quite as hard as I did in my life. I mean, as a ranch kid, you work hard your whole life. That's just how it is.
Yeah, that's so awesome, and it's so cool to see just how far you guys have come. I'm curious. I'm also very, very invested. I'm like, I'm curious to know how it all plays out too. So it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. So you have how many years left? Like 2 or 1?
About 2.5.
Oh, okay. So that's still a lot of time. Yeah. So I'm very curious.
Yeah, still a decent amount of time.
Yeah, but it's gonna go by like this though. It's gonna go by so fast.
I literally, like, I'm more than halfway through my current semester, and I was like, what? Like, someone said to me today, I'm like, wait, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, we're almost getting there. I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, time starts to move so fast. It's hard to keep track of it.
Yeah.
After all of this, we haven't really talked that much about the car. Like, you got to tell me, like, I watched the Audiotopia presentation on your car. So, like, getting
Awesome.
to do
Thank you.
that must have been a wave of, like, getting to, like, does the car perform and do everything that you hoped that it would do?
And I could talk a while about that because I was driving it in the video, and holy shit, man.
Honestly, I could see the holy shit on your face because you're just locked right in. So I was like, that must have been, like, getting to take it out and it doing everything that you hoped it would do, like having all those sort of roads converge into one place. Like, I got to hear about that.
Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, so basically, like, we at SEMA the year before, Sean from Autopia was like, we're going to show you your car, and we're like, I was like, and that was like even before the SEMA officially started, like, so many things were happening, and so many things made my SEMA trip. That was one of the best experiences ever. So that SEMA, basically that video started a whole year earlier, and he got in contact again, and he's like, hey, we're going to do this Midwest tour of all the biggest builders, and you're the last stop. Whoa. And we were like, and he's like, hey, between these days is when we're going to show up. And we're like, okay, we'll have the car ready. And the car had never been dynoed or ran or anything.
Tuned or anything yet.
Yeah. So we were in Wisconsin for a show, the season opener car show with Alex Martini. So we drove up there, we did the show for 2 days and his shop opening. We drove back, and then the next day or the day after, we literally got the car prepped for the dyno. We got it dynoed, and that was, oh my God, that was an experience in itself. I mean, we standing behind the car, it makes because our exhaust dumps into the diffuser. Oh, okay. So, and we had the diffuser mostly off because at that time it was multiple pieces. You could not wear a hat. Like, it would have, like, and you know when like there's like the cliff sides where you can like basically push forward and the wind's blowing you.
Yeah.
That's what it was like the same behind this car. 15 feet behind it.
Oh, wow.
It was. I did not
insane.
understand how an engine could move that much air. I mean, our engine builder who built the engines for the Hennessy F5, they say our valves are bigger than theirs.
That's insane.
Which is, and that's an 1800 horsepower. I mean, but to talk more about what the car was actually doing, it was, we basically took it to an airfield and then did some test runs to make sure it was running. And we got that kind of sorted out kind of quickly. And then, was it the day after we went to?
It was a couple of days later. On another airstrip where you saw the Autotopia video. We'd never been there before. We showed up and they told us that they're going to actually tear their runway out because it's too rough for airplanes. But it was smooth and it had been resealed. And we couldn't do that Autotopia shoot on the street. It would have been, somebody would have gotten a ticket or killed or something.
Because I mean, what was funny, like to put in like comparison, that they were driving an Escalade for the videos, or for the rollers, and they were going about 80 at some point, and they said, and I was really riding the brake to slow the car down enough for a lot of those rollers. I was purposely slowing that car down for a lot of the video. They were saying, "Hey, you're going too fast." They're like, "We can't even shoot it. It's going so fast." So basically, I was like, "Hey, is there anything you guys can do to go faster?" Because I just thought they were like halfway on the throttle, right? They're like, "We're full throttle. We literally can't go faster."
That's so funny.
So to say that car, I mean, I would say the acceleration is pretty comparable to an Indy car. I mean, it shoves you in the seat in a way that you've never experienced before. I mean, and we had never really set up the suspension before that. I mean, the toes were generally set. But
cameras and toes.
But other than that, it's not been set up. So, I mean, it was insane. At one point, the fastest I went through the corner was about 50% of what the car could do. So I was leaving. Yeah, and I wasn't. I could have, for the speeds what that car could do, I was slowing it down, because since I'm mentioning that we didn't set it up because it drives into this point where this suspension's kind of complicated. So you have that third device on there, which is meant to control aero loads. Because the way you look at it is there's push rods that go into those rockers, and then those rockers will push down on the shocks. And if you're going through a corner, they're going to be going opposite directions. One's going to be getting longer, one's going to be getting shorter. And that's where that anti-roll bar gets kind of starts twisting, right? But if both those shock bodies are compressing, and because the anti-roll bar is on a swivel, and the heave spring, the third device, mounts that anti-roll bar, which is on the swivel, it starts to come down, and that's where you start to control the aero loads. But the thing is, with this application, you can't have both of them come down at the same time. Otherwise, instead of having like 4 stable corners, it ends up being like a bicycle. So at 151 miles per hour, the things are several feet side to side. And I was like, and I was creeping up to it. Because that was kind of like a second shakedown run for us, because we'd never really run the car. We didn't know what to expect. So basically, and I was creeping up by 5 miles per hour each time I was coming through on that straight. So at 151, I was like, okay, I'm going to back down. And then I went to the corner, and then we came back and stopped. And to stop, I was like, let's take advantage of this opportunity. So I was like, hey, Dad, at 150 miles per hour, this thing it doesn't feel stable.
Wobble.
Can we do something heat spring? So we took the hood off at that point, and then you basically lengthened the gap. So then it just wouldn't activate at that time. And I took it up to 161 the next run, and I was able to on that bumpy runway, I was able to basically release my hands from the wheel. And
that's insane.
Yeah, with minimal setup. So it was insane to drive that car. And then what's funny is Sean, he came out of the car crying after like he had tears running down his face. It is emotionally jarring, that car. I mean, to feel that many G's and that much. I mean, literally the way I drive that car is that if I had no traction control on it, not even max horsepower. We have 9 power settings, and the max that went up to was 7, which is I'm guessing 1,100 or 1,200 horsepower. And the way I have to drive it without traction control, is, which I ran it most of the time because the traction control is really important mid-corner on those because it's Motorsports grade traction control. So it's basically point and shoot when you go mid-corner. So you just point the car where you want to go. You basically can put your foot down and go for it.
What?
Because if you there's a shot in there, if you go back to the video where I basically catch it a little bit, it wasn't really like the guys were like, "Here's the driver." It's like, I'm not a driver.
You're like, yeah.
So it's just like, is it like torque management then for the traction control?
Yeah, it's a torque base.
It's got torque control that really manages engine output and boost. It really manages the boost, and then it also has a standalone traction control system that go in that Motec system as well. So it can deal with both. Yeah.
That's so cool. Oh.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because if I were to put I have to modulate the throttle. I don't go really above 30-50% below 80. But then because it's starting to accelerate so fast that at 80 to 100, I just do this with the foot pedal, the gas pedal. And because it's literally like that. Then you go from 80 to 100. And then 100 to 150 is where the thing starts to soar. It's ridiculously fast.
Gosh, that is so cool. Oh,
I told Cavan for that shoot, I said, look, the film crew came from Los Angeles for the 6th of the 6-day shoot. Let's make sure we don't know a lot about this car. Let's go out there and give them the footage they come here for. So 50%, 60%. And if everything works like it's supposed to and we get their shoot in, then you can take him for a little better ride. And if you look at one of those videos on our Instagram, it's Sean when Cavan really kind of lit him up and gassed it a little more. And I've ridden in the car too. It's pretty spooky. I mean, it's really fast.
Well, because the first time with that, we mentioned how we were at a runway after the dyno. Basically, we went out the first time because there was something going on with the launch control system. It's always active on those cars. It wouldn't go above 3,500 RPM. It just sounded like there was anti-lag going on at that spot. So we basically contacted our tuner and we're like, hey, we don't know what's going on with the car. He's like, hold up, give me a second, give me 20 minutes. So he jumped off the call. He's like, and he called us 20 minutes later and he's like, hey, load this tune in. Well, the first thing I want you to do is go power 9, traction 0. So traction 0 means it's going to spin if it wants to spin. So me going out thinking, okay, it's not going to do much. It was really lame before. I was like, I went and the thing was literally sideways. And then I pointed back straight and I went like 110 or something.
Just goes on the limiter instantly. That's the nice thing about this Ford. And it revs super fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar setup to mine. And like we did 1,030 to the wheels where we had to shut it down because my trans can't take anymore. And it was funny because I was out with no traction control because we needed to put another sensor in. And then on this guy, I was out ripping. And he's like, why don't you just stay in it? I was
no.
I was like, you need to get in this car. And then he got in the car and it's just like, because it's so violent and it comes on so fast that it's like, because NA, it probably makes 660 to the wheels. And then as soon as the boost comes on, it's just straight to the moon. So it's like, it's a terrifying experience, but pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun. So like when I was watching you do it, because we have similar horsepower sort of setups, I was like, I know what this guy's going through right now. So
that's so funny. Yeah, it's just cool because, like,
I chewed all my fingernails off. I was like, oh my.
Yeah, dude, it just blew the tires off in every gear, and I was like, this thing is just. So I was like, how casual people throw these numbers out. Like, 1,000 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower. I was like, you have not experienced anything like this. This is like, I know you haven't, just in the way you're saying what you're saying, because this is one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. And it's so violent. I was like, this is not a casual thing. There's no way. It's impossible. So.
Yeah. And so what was the most amount of power you guys have experienced before this car? 50.
Yeah, we have a C7 Z06 manual that's 650 horsepower, which is a lot of fun.
That's still a lot of power.
They're fun to drive. But I've driven Indy cars a bunch of times, and they're 950 horsepower and 1,550 pounds. So that is a real eye-opener when you're driving one of those cars, the acceleration that they have and just that power experience. And they have no traction control. They did it back in the day when I worked on them. It was against the rules. But you have to really be careful when you're accelerating on cold tires with a car like that.
Yeah, that's so crazy. That's so wild. Because, again, people like think about power and it's like, oh, it's just 1,000 horsepower this, 1,000 horsepower that, and it looks like everybody has 1,000 horsepower, but no, it's very different. Yeah. So cool.
The only reason why I can go on the throttle the way I was describing earlier is because literally at like 80 is where you can start to feel the car
Downforce
compressed from all the air load. It's like, and 100 is squashed. It's
so
down.
cool.
And we're working on. We're like, I believe we're gonna have like 1,500 more pounds of downforce
After you changed it, yeah.
after our modifications,
Oh my gosh.
and we're still gonna go for more.
You should show them the
Insane.
buck.
Can you have
Oh,
too
yeah.
much? Can you have too much downforce? Is that possible?
The only way that you're gonna have two. Here's the buck that we're making.
Oh wow.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally as long as I'm tall. It's you said 6'6".
Oh my god.
Yeah, and we have you can see where the wheels are. I mean, the wheels are literally the largest slicks you can buy in the world from Michelin.
Yeah.
And that's how big that wheel opening, like this is, I cannot even reiterate how big this thing is.
That's
And
crazy.
we fixed our expansion ratio because we had kind of a, we basically fixed the expansion ratio because it was coming out too wide and it was also going up too high too. It just wasn't a consistent curve. So now it's like 9.2 degrees, fairly consistently across.
And so, like what I was saying earlier, like, can you have too much downforce or no? Or is that?
So what I've heard is there's not, like, here's the thing with downforce, right? The downforce isn't the problem, it's the drag from the downforce. So basically you can create something with a shit ton of downforce, but if you don't have the power or the gear ratio or something to pull it, then that's the problem. And there's also, with all that downforce, you need to make something that's strong enough to handle it. So I've heard of people making crazy floors, but they have to remake it twice or three times because it completely shredded itself apart because it wasn't built strong enough. Oh, yeah, so there's a strength issue when it comes with more downforce. So that's why I'm not even really concerned that we built extra rigidity in our chassis because it makes it upgradable.
Yeah.
You know, you're not stuck in one corner.
Yeah. Gosh, that's cool.
Plus, there's a car in the past called the Bone Crusher, and it made 10,000 pounds of downforce. I think it was a sports car, and both drivers, both drivers broke ribs trying to drive it.
Gosh. Wow.
Because what was happening is I think they were in Sydney or something, or there was some track where there was a bump, and basically every time they hit the bump, they were pulling like 3.3 Gs through the corner, and because when you're going that fast, the things suck down, so bumps are going to be bumps.
Oh my
right?
God.
So there was this small bump that they kept hitting on the track, and every time they hit the bump, it was weakening. It was creating like a hairline fracture in the ribs, and eventually they made it like, I don't know, 5 laps in or 10 laps in, and they both had to stop because their ribs were broke.
What?
So, like when you start creating that much downforce, you need to start considering, okay, can the human body take it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been an interesting story, or will be an interesting story to the people that experienced it. Wow.
Yeah.
I have never heard about that. That's crazy.
If you look it up, it's almost like a Group C car that had tons of downforce on it. I mean, literally, I think it's 3.3 tons of downforce.
I think it's a Nissan. They called it the Bone Crusher.
Yeah, that's a sick name, though. Oh, that's such a cool name. Oh, gents, anything else before we say bye? I feel like we tried to cap it, or not cap it, but we tried to stay at an hour. But I just looked and we're like almost at 2 hours.
Oh wow.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, that's so sick. And you guys say you're gonna be at SEMA, right? Perfect.
Yep.
So we will be seeing you there.
Now, we'll be in Central Hall.
Okay.
Pretty close to Holly and Edelbrock and that whole group on the floor there.
Awesome.
So you probably won't miss us, and we look forward to seeing you there. Please come by and see us.
We
Yeah,
most
we'll
definitely
come by and
will,
visit.
guys.
100%. Yeah, because I don't know because we are building that car with Ash, but have we talked about suspension yet and stuff?
No.
So yeah, we might chat with you guys. We'll see how that goes, but yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, guys.
We have left out.
Yeah, this has been a really good conversation, you guys. So much more in behind Hammerhead than what everybody's sort of seen so far. I really look forward to see what you guys, going forward, come up with. I'm obviously you get through a major project like that, you just automatically are like, what is next? That's in your head. You're thinking, how can I improve? It never ends. So looking forward to seeing what you guys do. Your dynamic is amazing. It's very inspiring. You had a lot of really amazing words of wisdom to share with everyone listening and watching, and appreciate that very much.
Yeah. And so with that said,
Well, we can't wait to. Oh, sorry.
no, keep going.
Oh, yeah. Well, we can't wait. We can't wait to see the Mercedes that you, Carlos and Ash, you're going to be making, because that's going to be an insane build. Like when I saw that come out, I got a build idea that I'm getting rendered. So it really inspired me. You know.
Yeah, that's so sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that build, having that render, and it's like how you guys were talking about, like creating relationships in this community that we have. That is one of those things that we're really looking forward to, working with people that can bring their skill sets into what we got going on, and we look forward to getting into it and learning a whole bunch of new things that is so much beyond anything we know now, and sort of evolving. It never ends. Always pursuing perfection, never quite there, but always pursuing it. This is what the game is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's been awesome talking with you guys.
Yes. And so with that said,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you guys. Thank you everyone so much for watching and listening. If you liked this, give it a thumbs up. Do all the subscription things. All the channels links are in the description below. Social media. Follow Horizon Motorsports at Horizon Motorsports LLC on Instagram. And we will see you guys later. Bye.